I'm Dr. Sophie Messager, and this is the Wisdom Messenger podcast. In this show, I interview pioneers in women's health and personal development about groundbreaking concepts that help women reclaim lost knowledge and restore inner wisdom. By bridging insights from ancient traditions and modern research, we question stale cultural narratives and midwife a new paradigm around birth, life transitions, and women's autonomy. Join me as we delve into stories and studies that empower women to reconnect with their inner voice and live their truth. Tune in as we rediscover what it means to fully trust ourselves and shape our collective future. In this episode, I interview Rachael Crow. Rachael is a spiritual guide dedicated to women's empowerment. We discuss embracing diversity, Rachael's recovery from stage 4 cancer, the power of cultural rituals and women's circles, the empowering nature of embracing a drumming practice, and techniques for heightened consciousness. Okay, so welcome to this episode of the Wisdom Messenger, and today I'm delighted to have Rachael Crow with us. And Rachael is a spiritual guide dedicated to women's empowerment. And she facilitates circles, workshops, and healing sessions. And from menarche to menopause, she creates sacred space, honoring life's transition. And Rachael is also the author of a book called Cancer as an Initiation. And we'll touch on that during our time together. But I'm delighted to have you there, Rachael. And I just thought, it'd be a good way to get us started to talk about the fact that your work focuses on empowering people to awaken to their authentic, powerful selves. And I'm just wondering if you could share with us what started this calling.
Wow. I think early on, I kind of noticed that I had this very strong kind of inner warrior in me, or rebel, some people would say. I mean, my mother would definitely go, as a child, I was a rebel. But I attracted, I guess, people who, I felt like I wanted to help them and kind of, I could give them, almost lend them a bit of my energy, give them a bit of that warrior spirit. And eventually, kind of after giving away too much of my warrior spirit, I recognized, certainly in my work with addicts, that you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's like people have to find their own inner power. So that's, I think, when I shifted my work to kind of really being like, you can be whoever you want to be. You just have to find that power within, and it's in all of us, and we can all be whatever we want to be. It's kind of, you can look at other people and be, oh, I want to be like them and I want to be like them. It's like, well, actually, you have to be yourself. There's no one else you can be. But we've all done that. We've all been like, oh, you look at someone, just think they're amazing, and you want to, a little bit of the magic that they've got. And I think that's what attracts us to different people, isn't it? It's like their energy and their, whatever. That's the thing that we wish we could bottle.
Yeah.
And it's bringing that out in people and kind of really getting them to see that it's in all of us. It's in all of us. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you have quite a diverse background. You've got teaching, spiritual work, you've got energy work, you facilitate circle, drum making, massage therapy, and I'm sure lots of other things. And I'm just wondering how you weave all this into your work. And I'm particularly interested to hear about that because I know that there's a lot of women in the field of supporting others who are multi-passionate, who are multi-talented, and who struggle with the idea that somehow they have to bring it all under one name or one hat or one title, so please share a bit
Like
about
when people come to me and that, because I do a bit of business coaching as well, and it's like, what shall I call my business, or what shall I call my website? It's like, just call it your name, because then whatever you do, it's, because I've done that. I've had so many different websites with, I started off with my Reiki healing, and I was very into angels. I still am. I've got angels behind me, and I called it Angel Healing, and then I shifted into it. It's kind of like, so eventually I was just like, it needs to be my name, doesn't it? But it's been an interesting journey, because the first kind of healing modality I got into really was massage. I did my massage training in my early 20s, and my teacher was quite ferocious in that she said, you know, you should become a master of one thing before you go on to the next, because everyone does that. You do a course, and, you know, of course, everyone like was, oh, I'm going to train in aromatherapy next. And she was just like, no, you have to get really good at massage. And so it took me quite a few years until the next thing I did was my Reiki training. And then I immediately started incorporating Reiki in with massage to people who wanted it, who were open to it. So, you know, eventually I follow my passions, and I'm the forever student. You know, things ignite me and I just go, oh, I want to learn that. And so, yeah, I've ended up with a lot of strings to my bow, and I probably am a jack of all trades rather than a master at all of them. Um, I think maybe I'm a little bit ADHD. Maybe I just can't. I find it hard to stick with one thing. You know, everything's so exciting on this planet.
Yeah.
So what I've now started to do, because I think particularly for my menopause journey and having had cancer, I had to really pull back and go, okay, it's time to do what you really love.
Yeah.
And what I now do is I make bespoke packages for people.
Yeah.
So I don't spend all day in a clinic doing massage all day. I couldn't do it. I could never really do it. It was exhausting because I'm a bit of a sponge and I take on people's energies.
Yeah.
So whilst I was doing that in my 20s and 30s, you know, also mothering and all those other things that take your energy, it was a big lesson in where do you want to put your energy,
Yeah.
and what feeds you rather than drains you. And I think that's a really big one for a lot of women. It's one of the things that comes up a lot in when I do business coaching with women, is actually, you know, they'll be like, oh, I do a healing session with someone and I come out drained, and I'm like, well, you shouldn't be drained from the thing that you love doing.
Yeah.
It should feed you. It should, you know, and that's one of the things that I love about Reiki and energy work, because actually while you're giving someone Reiki, you're
Yeah.
receiving it as well, and you feel amazing. So, you know, I think that's one of the things on all levels that, you know, if something is making you feel drained or, you know, not bringing you joy anymore, it's time to move on, time to let it
Yeah.
go. And that can be really hard when maybe you're quite successful at what you do,
Yeah.
you know,
And
to
of course, there's the aspect of like, as you touched on, I want to go backtrack a tiny bit. You said yourself you're quite porous. You absorb
yeah,
people's energy. I have that too, and sometimes people feel drained because they haven't learned to protect themselves. They haven't learned to clear. So it's like, is it that it's not something you need to do? Is it, do you need to do less of it? Because, even with energy work, even with well managed boundaries and cleansing and protection, you can, because of the process of holding space. And I'm sure, knowing you, that you don't do short sessions,
no.
that then you can't do like back to back sessions like
No,
that. When you hold
no.
the space deeply for someone, even if you're really skilled at holding, managing your own energy, and even if it's something you love, sometimes it can take a lot out of you because
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
it's that, you know, managing your time, isn't it? Well, you know,
yeah,
I know if I'm running a whole day workshop, I need the next day off.
yeah.
Sometimes I am crazy enough to book in two back to back or something, and I always go, why did I do that?
But did you find you could do that when you were younger and now you can't? Because that's certainly what I've found to be the
Yeah,
case.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. We don't recognize it when we're younger, that all that energy that we've got, we can burn the candle at both ends
yeah,
almost. I mean, it's like, but it's certainly, I think, when I started looking into menopause and what happens to the body, and seeing all these women coming to menopause with adrenal fatigue, it's like, you know, time to pull back before that transition. You know, it's
yeah,
really time to kind of, okay, look at what you're doing. Where can you conserve your energy? How can you not go up through that next part of your life
yeah,
with that exhaustion? You know, so because I think as women, we're just very naturally giving, aren't we? It's like, whether it's through mothering or friends or whatever. And it's, you know, it's one of the biggest lessons is, how do we manage our own energy, and
yeah,
that self-care, you know, it's number one priority. But it's like we're always bottom of the pile, and it's
yeah.
like we have to become top of the pile.
I know.
And, you know, make sure you're getting treatments, you're having a massage, you're going for a Reiki session or whatever it is that you know, feeds you.
Yeah. Have you noticed? I'm sure you've noticed that too. That a lot of people, women in caring professions, are really, really shit at receiving.
Yes. yeah, that was another big lesson for me. It's like, yeah, yeah, and we have to get good at that, and we have to get good at supporting each other in that. I mean, maybe in our women's circles, or I mean, I did a little video yesterday because I've been to a funeral or a celebration of life, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if we could hear all these things while we're alive?
Yeah.
But also how excruciatingly uncomfortable it is to hear someone saying amazing things about you. And I think it maybe is a British thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
We find taking compliments so hard.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
putting ourselves first. It's like, why is that? Why is it hard? If we were a battery, you can't. If you once you run dead, it's like, where are you plugging your battery back in and recharging yourself?
Yeah. And I think again, with the lack of ability to receive, there's also a blindness to the beautiful things we do for others, like almost like, pushing it away and going, oh yeah, but it doesn't matter, it's no big deal.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, being completely, what you just said, the hearing how the beauty the gifts and beauty that other people see in us,
yeah,
it should be a standard thing. I've started to organize things like that for people's birthday or for women when they're pregnant, as part of Mother Blessings, asking everybody to speak their strengths. And usually everyone's in tears
yeah, yeah.
in a
Well,
good way, but it's like, where in the space, which space does that, is that happen that's normal? I find that most celebrations in Western world are so shallow and
yeah, it's just
not
about,
actually honoring the
yeah.
person. The typical, say, birthday parties that people bring you gifts and cards
Drinking
and
and
drinking.
food and
Um,
yeah,
and I always remember once when I was sitting around a fire with a group of friends, and the discussion became quite negative. It was in the whole lockdown time, and this guy said, "Stop! Like, can we spend the evening talking about what we love about each other?" And it was phenomenal. I mean, there was some discomfort because people feel uncomfortable receiving, but sometimes when it's your turn to speak about someone, you might not actually know what to say. Depending on how well you know them, which is why in those contexts, it's actually quite good that people come having thought about what they actually appreciate and love about that person. But yeah,
yeah,
the lack of witnessing and the lack of honoring, especially of women, because my experience is that while some men also struggle to see their beauty and gift and can't see their goodness, I think it's deeper and worse in women.
yeah.
Is that, do you find that too?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really easy in those situations, like at parties and things, where people just you end up in that negative kind of gossipy, or
Yeah,
and of course you add alcohol and things like that to the situation. Whereas for my 50th, because it was just at the end of all my cancer journey, I had this massive party, and I called the women and I was like, I want to have a sharing circle about, for me it was like getting older, but they
yeah,
did that. They all of them went around and said all the things that they appreciated about me, and I had no idea they were going to do that, and I was just in tears all night. But it's that record, like being at a funeral, and all these people pop up, and you're there going, wow, these, the lives that we've lived and the people that we've touched. And there were people from Bristol were at this funeral in Wales that I knew, and
yeah.
I was just like, I didn't know that you knew this person. And the
Mm,
connections. And that's where, like, a party or something, a ceremony or a celebration, you get that opportunity to really get all the people together from all the different parts of your life, which
yeah,
might not have touched, or overlapped. And
mm,
it's beautiful. But yeah, I mean, like you say, I mean, men and women. I
yeah,
mean, I remember, having attended menarche ceremonies where these young girls are like, they're so embarrassed when their dad stands up and says something. And I just said to him, I didn't hear my dad say anything like that about me until my wedding day. And if you don't get married or your dad has passed away, when does your father stand up and say all the beautiful things about you as his daughter? And, I was
yeah,
like, you girls, you might not appreciate it now. It might be really embarrassing and you hate it, but when you're older, you'll remember those words and you'll appreciate
yeah,
them. So powerful, so powerful. Yeah,
yeah. the lack of, you know, what everything you're talking about is the lack of meaningful ceremonial spaces to accompany those life transition, where indeed people speak the gifts that, you know, I'm reading a book about rituals written by a West African specialist, and he talks about, you know, how everything that's wrong in our culture, in the Western culture, is because of the lack of rituals, and the fact that there's a really touching part of the book where they say that when the woman is heavily pregnant, they do some kind of ceremony or in labor to speak to the soul that's coming and ask them, what is it you're bringing to this community?
For the tribe,
Yeah,
you know,
what's your gift? You
yeah,
know, because this is the story of this man's birth, the author of the book, and his specialty becomes to act as a bridge between the white man's world and the tribal.
Malidomasomes, but
That's right. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and interestingly, I did read his wife's book years and years ago when I became a doula, and I never knew that they, you know, when I'm now looking at this other book from the angle of the drumming book I'm writing, I had no idea they were husband and wife, because Sobonfu Some has a wonderful book called Welcoming Spirit Home that talks about how birth is in her tribe and how birth is in the Western world and everything that goes with it. And when you talk about this father speaking at menarche, I just think it sets the tone for being expecting some form of honoring around the period of motherhood, and then it would set the tone for that to happen around the period of menopause. You know, and when I recently ran a drumming course where I had women discuss in pairs what happened to them when they first bled, and I expected to hear stories of no celebration, but I was absolutely horrified by the stories they told me, because it was not celebration, it was much worse than that. One of them said that she bled for the first time aged 10 whilst at boarding school and not knowing what was happening to her, and that a male teacher had to talk through her through the toilet door to explain what was happening, because she thought she was going to die.
Yeah,
and
I
and then
remember that at school. I remember a girl coming to me and saying to me she thought she was bleeding and she thought she was dying. And I was one of the first girls in my year to have my period. And I was just like, you'll be fine. I've got a pad in my bag. No one had told her, you know. And
yeah,
I really hope that, you know, the now generation, like I've got a daughter in her 30s and I've got a daughter who's a teenager, and you know, they were so raised in that environment of ceremony, and because I've been doing all this stuff, they didn't really want them because they were like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
no, mine didn't
you
either.
don't need them because you've been raised in that it's normal,
Yeah.
whereas for us it wasn't, and it was so shamed and hidden that it was like we really needed it. We really needed it.
Yeah, and what blew my mind in this context of hearing those women's stories is that women younger than me, because I thought this belonged to my grandmother's generation.
Okay,
Because my
yeah.
mother told me that when her mother bled and she went to her mum saying, "Mother, I'm bleeding," her mum said, "Shut up, dirty girl."
Oh God.
And I thought that belonged to my grandmother generation, you know?
Yeah.
But when I was hearing women who were in their 40s having had that experience,
Mm.
and we did a menarche reclaiming ceremony. I basically handed them I said, just go and do what you wish you'd received, create some, and they did in the space of 10-15 minutes the most gorgeous spiral out of flowers on the floor, and we walked it, and we became with a flower and an elder, and people were drumming, and I was just, because I'd had anxieties around, you know, this was the first time I was teaching this, whether they would need to have them come up with thing, and I didn't have to do anything because I think they have it inside.
Well, there you go. I was just going to say that's the empowerment, isn't it? Of like, actually, you can do this.
Yeah,
You just have to remember what it is that's in, like, like you say, what would you have liked? What would you have liked? And that's where everything I teach comes from. It's like, I wish someone had done this for me. I wish there
yeah,
was a course like this. I wish there was, So, okay, I'll create it then.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, hearing every single one of those women had worse than a lack of honoring, had something really not.
Yeah, yeah,
I can't even find a word for it, but I was so bemused. I was so shocked by that, that suddenly I had a whole new level of respect, appreciation for my mother. Because when I got my first period, my mother took me to the best ice cream parlor in town where I lived in Normandy in France, and said, we're going to celebrate your entry in the world of women. And took me to one of these places where you get like, it's like a proper like Sunday bowl, with like
yeah.
all the trimmings, and I still remember how proud I felt. And I had not quite grasped how lucky I had been until I heard those
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
And yeah, it's
And that's the power of the women's circles, isn't it? Where we listen to each other and we hear those stories, and then we create a ceremony, and then we shift it. We're
yeah,
shifting that energy, and we're shifting it on behalf of all the other women on the
yeah,
planet. I think that's the really important thing for me, is like, this isn't just for us. We're not doing this for us. We're shifting the energetic field, for all those women who don't get a chance to be at a ceremony, or,
yeah.
it's powerful. It's very powerful.
Last weekend I was talking to a young woman whose friend is pregnant with her first baby, and she was saying to me she's invited to the mother baby shower, and I was like, if you can, because she's into spiritual work, if you can bring a little thing into the very commercial baby-centered lack of spirit gathering, and it could be as simple as binding thread around a wrist, or ask the women to bring a bead each and make a little, as they gift the bead, they gift, they speak why they chosen that bead, what it represents, and the mother gets some kind of little like necklace / rosary to play with during labor. Because I said to her, every time I've done that, when I was working as a doula, in the early days I wasn't doing mother blessings, but when I got invited to clients' baby showers, I was really quite sad by the energy of what was being, it was all about the baby. It was baby this, baby gift, baby nappy cakes, and commercial, and not honoring the mother. And I started adding little threads in there. And every time I did it, and sometimes they were very young women, they all said to me, oh, well, I've never been in it. I've never done something like that. This was amazing. Or the same happened with like closing the bone ceremony, when I did impromptu, just sort of rapping as with a group of women. And those women just burst into tears and said, I've had 9 children and nobody's ever done anything like that for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually what we're doing in those moments is creating community. So, in those beads or those threads, you're bringing the sisterhood together.
Yeah.
And that's what, is so missing in society. I mean, the ritual, the community, the sisterhood. And, I think in all the women's circles I've held and I've been in, so many of us carry the witch burnings and the betrayal. And, I've spoken to women who've been like, why would I go to a women's circle? I can't stand women. They're backstabbing, or whatever. They steal your boyfriend. It's kind of like, I was like, really? Are we going back to teenage? But we carry it. And that's where we need, this healing happens of like, it's time to drop that. It's time to really be sisters and hold each other's backs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is as simple as, tying a thread around our
Yeah.
wrists and being like, okay, we're all going to look at this, and we're all going to remember this woman who's having a baby, and we're all going to focus on her at this, at that time. And it's just like, so simple.
Yeah. And every time you do it, hopefully you're creating ripples.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And people just listening to us and watching this will go, oh my goodness, that's such a simple, great idea. I'm going to do that.
I know. And it's that's the other thing, when people, I'm sure, I'd like to hear what your view on that is, but one of my big themes is that people say to me, oh, how should I, what's the best way to do blah, blah, blah. Yeah, say mother blessing or binding your pelvis after birth. And I'm like, well, it depends. Because, the range of people and the range of difference and the range of what's going to suit one person. And also that it can be really simple, and that you don't need specialist training. Specialist training might give you ideas and skills you didn't have, but to hold a beautiful, simple ceremony for a woman friend who's, going to have a baby, it doesn't
I
This,
know it's
yeah,
about really listening, isn't it? It's like, when I've been invited to hold a, a blessing way or closing the bones, it's like I meet with the mum and I'm like, what do you want from this?
yeah,
What is your intention for this? Let's co-create it, or you even co-create it in the moment, like you said about those women who just in 10-15 minutes
yeah,
created a spark. It's like, yes, the whole training thing is a really tricky subject, isn't it? Because obviously you don't want people who haven't got a clue what they're doing out
yeah,
there messing around with people's energies and causing more harm than good.
yeah,
But in these situations, it's in our bones as women. It's in our wombs, it's in our bones, it's in our breasts, it's in our hearts.
yeah,
We know what to do.
yeah,
And that's what, all I've constantly said to women, listen to your womb. What does your womb say? Listen to your heart. What does your heart say? And it kind of, it doesn't bother me anymore when I see courses of, these things, and I just think, what, if people have got that much money and they really need to be told what to do for these things, let them. But I've just constantly gone, it's inside you, it's inside you. And that's because when I was 17, 18, I looked at doing a priestess training. I won't mention what it was. And I had an elder woman in my life who was a shamanic practitioner. And she said to me, Rachel, you don't need to spend money to become a priestess. You either are one or you aren't.
mm,
You don't need to go and do a course to learn how to make bridey dolls or Bridget's
yeah,
boxes. And that stuck with me, because I think we can get really attached to, the certificate or you can get a Reiki certificate, but you might not be channeling Reiki. It's like, that's the thing. I mean, like, getting a massage certificate is just the beginning of your massage journey. It
yeah.
probably took me 10 years to get good at
I
massage.
know. The last closing the bone, I thought that there was a woman who said to me, "Are you really sure I am now able to offer this?" And I said to her, "Yeah, you've got your driving license. You're not going to know how to drive. You need to go and drive a fucking car." I said to her,
Yeah,
You're not going to know. You're not." So in the early days, if it feels too scary to like offer it to people you don't know, just go and do friends, do a
yeah,
family, do like sisters, aunties, who cares, like, but just get some feedback and
yeah.
see
And,
how it
and build
feels
your
for you, because that's the
build your
most important
confidence.
thing.
Yeah,
When when people return case studies to me, I often challenge them back, because I said, I want to know how you felt. I'm not interested in the like nuts and bolts. I asked for a video as well, but I want to a self-reflection on how they felt physically, emotionally, spiritually, how the client felt physically before and after, and all that kind of really like, and most people, I would say, should do that naturally, but from time to time I have to go and say, yeah, I want to know more about your emotions. I
yeah,
want to know more. When I was mentoring new doulas, I found that to be the case as well. Sometimes I said people would return reflection pieces, and it was like, it was facts.
like a list of what they did.
Yeah, and I was like, well, it's not like, I want to know how you felt.
Yeah.
But I think again that's not what the education system fosters.
That's what I was just going to say. That comes from going to school, doesn't it? It's just like, get a piece of paper in front of you and you feel like you're doing an exam or something.
Yeah, and the same with what you said about. So for me, there's a balance, in terms of learning, because obviously, the worst situation is when you don't know what you don't know, and as you say, you can unwillingly cause harm.
Mm.
But it has to be a balance somewhere in the middle, because the other side, which is like you could get 3 PhDs and still feel you're not competent, and the fact that our culture doesn't value lived experience. One of my really good massage therapist friend, who's probably one of the best massage therapists I know, she's from Colombia. She trained with traditional midwives. It was all intuitive. There was no set way of doing it. And then she came here to the UK, realized that to practice she needed to have a piece of paper, and went to do a massage course. And she said it was the most boring thing she'd ever done, because it was like, you do this movement, it was like a list, a recipe.
Yeah.
And she said, where was you know,
Yeah. You
the
got to,
flow, the sort of responding to what you're feeling under your hands, and
exactly. And that's kind of going back to that, all these things we would have just learnt from the elders in
Yeah.
these intuitive practices just would, or we would have witnessed them as children and they'd be normal. Yeah, it's
Yeah, a bit like the way that I remember being fascinated to read that, like women who belong to culture where they still carry their babies as standard.
yeah,
They carry their siblings as children, so by the time they become a mother, they already have the skill.
yeah,
But we're not like that. Do you see what I mean? We are like almost like an animal in a zoo in that respect. So when you've not, like the other example is breastfeeding, as children, we should have witnessed
yeah.
women nursing their babies. And that doesn't happen because I
No,
remember when I was breastfeeding my own children and sitting in toddler groups and little toddlers coming and kind of looking,
yeah.
like looking with clear interest what was going on there. And I could feel that how when you were saying here like a sponge, to little children, they don't even have to make an effort to absorb
No,
knowledge.
that's it. Yeah, and that reminds me, I remember being in a cafe breastfeeding and a woman coming in with her baby and they had these weird bib things. I don't know if people still use them, but she put on this bib
Oh
thing
yeah, yeah, I've seen
into her
that. Yeah,
baby. And I was doing my La Leche League training, and I remember kind of saying to them, why are these things being made? It's just, and they said, well, anything that helps a mum feel confident to breastfeed. And I was like, well, yeah, I can get that. But I was just sitting with my boob out in the
yeah,
cafe,
yeah.
smiling at this other mum, almost like you have permission to this is completely normal. You shouldn't feel like you have to,
I
put
know.
your baby underneath a blanket to feed. Would you like to eat your dinner under a blanket?
I've always had very conflicting opinions about this because I, like you, I think that's just the fact that culturally it's okay, it's not right. But then if it's going to make the difference between a woman and being able to breastfeed or not.
Yeah, yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
that's where the community and the sisterhood and the aunties and it being normal. I mean, even when I had my first child, my mum told me to go upstairs in the bedroom and breastfeed and not breastfeed in front of my dad. I was just like, Mum, this is what boobs are for.
I've had doula client asking me if is it okay if I feed the baby in front of you, and I'm like, I've seen your vagina.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? It's just crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But again, the whole how culture sees the body,
Well, we've been so
naked body, and how it's
over-sexualized.
automatically associated with sex
Mm.
because it's such a repressed culture. And I remember years ago reading a book in French a book from the 1930s, where this like French Polynesian tribal chief comes to France and he writes a book about his experience. And in there, one of the things he does write is that he's never seen a nation where men are so obsessed with the bodies of women. He says, in my culture, we get to enjoy the beauty of young women, but we don't make a big deal of it because it's there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in a culture that hides,
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting, isn't it? It's like we put clothes on to hide it, but actually it makes it more exciting in some way, or kind of
yeah, and there's nothing less sexy than nudity, And I belong to a nudist swimming club in Cambridge, and like the other day I was talking to someone who was asking me all these questions about, but isn't that sexual? And I said, no, it's nothing less sexual than a group of people who like to swim naked. There's none of that energy at all.
yeah,
And he was saying to me, oh, well, I run a shop, so I couldn't possibly go to this club and then having customers coming into my shop who've seen me naked. And I'm like, well, there's two types of customers. The one who are going to the club, they won't give a fuck about seeing you
yeah,
naked. And the ones who do give a fuck, they won't come to the club.
yeah, exactly.
So you don't have to worry about that. But it's really interesting, the relationship we have with touch, the body,
Mm.
how it's all categorized. And I'm very lucky to be part of a community of people who dance 5 rhythms, and we touch each other, we dance in very non-sexual but sensual ways. And when I started belonging to this community in the early days, I thought, are they all shagging each other? Because the way they dance, I didn't realize how I'd been formatted, because my only experience of dancing before that was clubbing in my 20s.
Yeah,
And there I was, in my close to 50 when I started going dancing and going, you know, thinking, oh my God, I've been made to see the world in this kind of very blinkered
Yeah.
way. Yeah. So I want to, to go back to the sort of some of the things I'm really interested to hear from your experience, and that is that you've experienced some major awakening, including reaching rock bottom with addiction in 1999 and then being diagnosed with cancer in 2018. And just would like to hear how those experiences have shaped your path.
Well, I certainly think kind of these rock bottoms or dark nights of the soul, as hard as they are, they're massive periods of growth. I mean, I just think I feel like, I expanded in ways that are almost, difficult to put into words. I mean, that it was interesting around my addiction stuff. I mean, I've always been I don't like the label spiritual, but hippie, whatever.
Yeah.
I've always been into all that stuff. And I remember feeling like I was going crazy with it all. And I phoned up an astrologer, and he actually said to me the moment I called him was the peak of my Saturn return. And I literally felt like I was going crazy. I was seeing things, angels, spirits, all that kind of stuff. But I had an experience where what I thought was an angel kind of picked me up out of I was literally in the gutter, drinking too much. I'd go out, I would leave my children at home by themselves, and I'd fallen over. I was literally in the gutter, fallen
Yeah.
over, and what I perceived was an angel picking me up and just going, I love you, and you have got much better things to be doing in your life than this. You have a path ahead of you, and it's not going to happen unless you sort yourself out. And then a series of quite interesting synchronicities happened that, I did. I sorted myself out, got myself cleaned up. And it was only a couple of years ago that I was doing a week with Dr. Joe Dispenza where we were doing meditation, and I saw myself pulling myself, my future self, pulling myself out of the gut. I was just like, oh, it was me. It was me from the future, kind of going, come on, you're not going to be me if you don't sort yourself out. So that was quite an emotional moment of just realizing, this is it. This is the fact, we're interdimensional and we can jump time and all that stuff is like, it's bigger than we can possibly imagine. But yeah, I mean, that was massive. And I learned a lot through treatment centers and recovery rooms. The skills that I learned in those places are what I use in my circles now, because it's like no one's going to stop drinking unless they're really ready. No one's going to stop taking drugs unless they're really ready. So, I don't work with people unless they're really ready to change. Do you really want to do this? Do you really want your business to be successful? Do you really whatever it is? It's like, because my time is precious and I don't want to waste it with someone who's just messing around.
Yeah.
So, in that respects, it taught me really good boundaries. And I work the 12-step program, which is a very spiritual program, and it's all about God, which some people don't like that word, but
Yeah.
to me, it's just a word that's
Yeah.
source, creator, goddess.
Yeah.
So it opened me up on another level, because I'd been raised Catholic and I'd had all the shaming of all that kind of stuff. It shifted me in a way that I could look at religion through different eyes, and stop being so judgmental of it.
Yeah.
It's like, people have whatever their thing is that feeds them, and for some people it's going to church, and for me it's like nature is my church, drumming circles are my church, women's circles are my church. So yeah, that was pretty huge. And and again with cancer, I mean, I just feel like these things come because you're not on the right path. It's like, if you think you can go through something like cancer and not change, then it's like you're missing the point.
Yeah.
I was in that, like I said earlier, of like, when something's comfortable and you're maybe earning money from it, and it's easy, but it's not fulfilling you anymore, and it's not, there's no joy in it anymore. It's become a crutch. And that's what, my life had become. I like, I'm sure you can, we can hold these circles or do the work we do, and we make it look so easy because we've been doing it for years, but it was time for me to let it go and do something different. And and I also think that's the journey of menopause as well. It's kind of like, it's the call back to the self. It's like, who do you really want to be? And it was almost like I could choose whether to live or die. You know, I was given a stage 4 diagnosis. It wasn't looking great. You know, it's like, so what do you want to do? And if you're going to live, what are you going to do? You know, you're going to really live. Are you going to
Yeah.
really live? Are you going to grab life with 2 hands and really live it? And that's what I had to do. So there was a massive shedding of, you know, my old work, although I still dip into the womb work. And I mean, even, you know, I started a women's circle last year after a few years of not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it in a very different way than I was, you know, and I'm not, you know, I walk about life with the armor of God on. I'm not a sponge anymore. That was one of the things I had to get very clear about, because it's like, I do think some of my, I'm not saying cancer is caused by being a sponge, but I'm certain that I absorbed a lot of those stories. And I remember listening to Eve Ensler, who wrote the Vagina Monologues. She had uterine cancer, and she said she went back to the Congo recently, and all the frontline workers that were working with the women who'd been abused or raped, all those things, all the frontline workers had cancer. So that, you know, that's like, it's not catching. Why have all these frontline workers? Because it's stressful, because you're hearing horrendous stories, because you're under such pressure, you know, and you want to, well, I had this thing, I want to save the world. You know, that was my biggest thing that I really had to go, Rachel, you know what, you're never going to do that. And that was almost there since being a child. You know, I put pictures of starving Ethiopians up on the wall when we were having our Christmas dinner and going, you shouldn't be eating this food. There are people in the world starving. You know, I had this real thing of like, I couldn't bear that the world was so unfair and it was so dark, and there were, you know, and I just don't engage in any of that energy anymore, you know, because I've come to this different understanding of life and how life works, and we all have choices, and we all choose to incarnate in different places and experience different things, and you know, it is how it is, and we can send prayers and we can send love, and but let's stay in that higher vibration of peace, because we're never going to have peace on the planet if we haven't got peace in here, you know. And that energy of like shouting at people to stop stop eating, or you know, become vegan, or whatever it is that's your thing, it's like, that's not going to change the world. You change the world by just being peaceful. And you know, and I almost, you know, there's a part of me that, you know, I love time on my own now, and you know, I think I was probably a nun in a past life, or maybe several past lives, but I could almost see myself, you know, getting older and living more of that kind of a peaceful lifestyle, just pottering, praying, growing food. You know? And that's what I try and embody in my life today. It's like, I want life to be simple and joyous, you know. And I still am mothering 2 children, one, you know, who's a teenager. So it's like, you know, it's complicated and it's emotional, and you know, there's all the shit that changes. You think I'm crazy hippie mum, but you know, it's like,
And I wonder, Rachel, when people are in that dark night of the soul, what do they need the most in terms of support from others?
well, I was going to say, I mean, as hard as it is that time on your own. You know, ultimately you're being called to that time on your own, but it's also for me, community. I mean, there's that saying, isn't it? It takes a village to raise a child. Well, actually, it takes a village to do anything. It takes a village to heal. It takes a village to hold you. And it's trusting, even when you're in that dark night of the soul, or maybe it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and whatever it is where your head's going, you know, it's like trusting your angels are with you, your ancestors are with you, your women's circle are holding you energetically. You know, that's what I just had to keep coming back to. I'm held, and surrender. You know, for me, it was a complete surrender to death. I didn't, you know, it was like, well, if I'm going to die, I need to just surrender to it, because you can't fight it. And I think that's, you know, it's the hardest thing to do, because I remember one woman saying to me, what's the difference between letting go, like in defeat, I let go, and surrendering? And I was like, surrendering isn't being in defeat. Surrendering is going with the flow. It's kind of going, this is what it is, and I can't actually change it. So just be with it. And I do think being a woman and being in touch with our cycles, we go through that mini death every month. So if you've practiced that, that monthly self-care of just at least, having a day off, an evening off, an hour off, whatever it is you can get, to really drop into that surrender of your blood time, of the magic. We are, as as women, we're not really taught that that's the magical time of our cycle where the veil is thin. There's that book, a woman's body, woman's, oh, I can't remember it now, shaman's body, woman's body, or something. Anyway, it's like, we are the natural shamans. Body initiates us with our cycles through it, whether it's the cycles of life or our actual menstrual cycles. And it's like you're given an opportunity to drop into that. So I think for me, when I dropped into it, I realized I wasn't really scared because I'd practiced it so much with my bleeding. I practiced surrendering. So, I mean, obviously, there's, when I say self-care, I mean, people can kind of think bubble baths or massage, and it's like, it has to be on all levels. It has to be the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and for me, obviously, health was a big one. I mean, I remember saying earlier about the women who were coming to menopause with chronic fatigue. At 42, after I had my son, I went and did a nutrition training because I could feel my body being so depleted. And it's like, and I didn't want to go into menopause, especially mothering through menopause and almost like breastfeeding through menopause. It's like, I want to learn what my body really needs to nourish it. I thought I ate healthy already, but doing a nutrition course, I was like, wow, I eat so much crap that I didn't know was crap, like soya milk, processed things that are processed basically, but it's like soya milk. Yeah, make your own oat milk. It's really easy. These things that we buy in packets that are convenient. I don't always make my own milk, but all the fats and too much dairy, too much carbs, all those things, it's kind of like, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to do that. We're all different, and it's about listening to your body. It's like really deeply listening to what your body needs at that time. So journaling, it's always a good one when you're in the dark night of the soul. Kind of do some journaling, getting it all out of you, because it's when it's going round and round in your head, whatever it is. It's like get it out. But women's circles, I just think such, those, or whatever, in whatever way, your community. It might not be a women's circle, it might be your yoga class, or it might be your dance people, but it's like have your community, have your support. I mean, family, it can be great, but I'm the black sheep. My family are very useless. Some people have supportive families, I believe.
And I wanted to ask you, you're a medicine drum maker. You teach women to make drums, and I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about, why do you find it such a powerful tool for women's empowerment?
I think again, it's like, I always say that this is the planet of forgetting. We've forgotten, as women, we've forgotten our power. And maybe it was a purposeful thing that women forgot their power so that men could, rise up a bit or something. But for me, what I've witnessed is women find their power with their drum. It's almost like it's a bit of a crutch. It's a bit of a thing you can hide behind, especially if it's a big one. But eventually, after hiding behind their drum, they become empowered enough or confident enough to actually stand with their drum. And I have seen women who come to my drum circles, they've made a drum with me and they're a bit like, I don't know what I do now, because we've got a big community here of a lot of women who have drums, and they turn up at every event. And even at the celebration of life, the woman who passed away was an African drummer. But then there was a load of us with our shamanic drums as well. And you can see the intrigue, and people come, and some women come and go, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm making a drum, but something in me, they know it's part of their medicine basket. And and they might come to a drum circle and be like, I've got no rhythm. I don't know how to play a drum. I'm like, I didn't either. You're just self-taught, and you just listen to let's start with your heartbeat. Start with your heartbeat. It's like the body telling us what to do, isn't it? We're drumming the beat of Mother Earth, and eventually, they're the ones standing up singing. Being the ones in the corner, I don't know how to play, I don't know what I'm doing. They're right at the front leading the song, you know, coming to the circle, like, oh, I learned a new chant, you know, and it's like, wow, you know. And then you see them at an event, or you see them at, you know, I was asked to actually go to a friend's funeral in London and drum from the cemetery to the park where we were going to do some dancing, and I had no idea it was like nearly an hour's walk. And I was drumming the streets of London, and people were coming out of their houses, and I just, you know, the old me couldn't have done that. I would have been so shy and so, but it was like, I'm not doing this, is nothing to do with me. This is for my friend who's passed away, and this is
Yeah.
for his family who've asked me to do this, and I'm going to stand in my power, and I'm going to walk through these streets. And I, you know, I wasn't embarrassed. I didn't feel stupid. I just felt like, you know, this was a wish for them. You know, I'm fulfilling this. It's not, and it is that taking yourself out of the equation, isn't it? It's like, this isn't about me. This is, you know, I'm doing this on behalf of whoever, whatever. Thy will be done.
Yeah.
It's amazing how spirit works through us. When I first made a drum, I didn't think I was going to be drumming the streets of London for a funeral procession. It's like, I'd just be at home by myself drumming, you know, doing my
Yeah, it fascinates me. I know a lot of women. I've discovered recently that a lot of women I know actually have a drum, but they're not really doing anything with it. Because of all sorts of, you know, ideas that like, I don't know how to do it right. I'm not good enough. I feel uncomfortable because again, it's hippie, weird, you know, tribal. And just to say to women, just drum 5 minutes a day, like for yourself, by yourself, you know, see what comes with that, because of the change of consciousness that happens with, you know, the one thing that has really excited me as I write the book I'm writing about women and drumming is that the drumming is just as powerful as psychedelics.
Yeah.
In terms of, and it's easier and safer because you can control it more easily, but also it's integrating what it brings to you is done in a sort of much more softer way, you know, than people say, go and have a big trip and they don't know what to do with what comes, you know, with the, and it's not something that's known.
No.
That drumming, like what people think drumming is and what the practice is and what it can do, like not just change your consciousness but rewire your brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and like it's so complex to explain when you're not doing that, how much it can bring to people, and often you don't see, as you say, you know, until those women who were in the corner and are thinking I'm not good enough. And then what I love in the drum circles I run is seeing women who come, they've never been to a drum circle, but very much like you said, they come and they feel this kind of desire to be there, and then a few months down the line they have a drum.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you were talking, I was just thinking, yeah, and the indigenous peoples knew this. You know, they were using rattles and drums, you know, and it's kind of like, I mean, I've even had women who do like those psychedelic things, and they're like, oh, you know, why don't we all have some mushroom tea, or why don't you know? And I'm just like, I mean, apart from the fact, as an ex-addict, that's not my thing, but I'm like, you know what? I get high from sitting on the earth and drumming. I don't need to add anything else into the mix. But also for me, it's really important that we're all in the same vibration. You know, it's like, let's all be in this, you know, if you want to do that, that's fine, good. But let's all be in the same vibration, because that's where the power is. We're creating a field of, you know, of healing for the planet. You know, and I do think, you know, as weird and what a thing we've been through the last few years, those of us who've been doing this work for our lives, maybe we created what's happening now because we've been dreaming and drumming for the new earth, for a different way of being and a different way of life. And that's certainly what I'm seeing, is that, you know, people are waking up and going, I don't want to do this 9-to-5 job anymore. Do I have to do this? No, I don't have to do it. You know, there's people have, like, you know, my family have looked at me for years going, you know, what are you doing with your life? You know, when are you going to get a proper job? And I'm just like, I'm free. I don't want to be part of
I
that.
don't know if you like the movie Avatar. I don't love the second half of it, but I always remember there's a scene in that movie that the guy is talking to his like video journal and going, well, what do you think they're gonna want us for blue jeans and light beer? Like, when he starts to realize what they have, and that's something that's always fascinated me, especially the more I delve into the history of how drumming was removed from women and how drumming was removed from people,
Yeah.
and how what we did to nation that we colonized, we did to ourselves first. Is that, you know, the what we see as savages and what what the average quality of life, because I see, especially since COVID, but I think because of my own growth, you know, I'm like, people aren't happy, they're not living, they're and I think that's a spiritual life is just as important to us as beings as eating and drinking. And I, like you, was raised a Catholic, and I rejected all that in my teens, and I became very quickly aware that, you know, when you leave that, what's left, what's there, you have to recreate your own thing, because there's no container apart from established religions. And that, I think, it's harming people to not feel that they belong to something greater than themselves, and that we're all the same and all connected. And that where the drumming is really, really powerful is because it gives people in one session in a drum circle an experience of unified consciousness.
Yeah, yeah. And you must have the same thing where people kind of go, oh, is it Native American? Are you doing Native American? And we're really fixated on that, you know, these indigenous cultures that also were completely wiped out, or
Yeah,
you know, we attempted to, you know, that happened to us. You know, the
yeah,
Romans came and they took our way of being, our connection to the earth. And it's kind of like, we need to remember that we're not copying. You know, when people say, oh, your drum's Native American, I go, no, they're Celtic. They're made
yeah,
in Wales from, you know, timbers and hides that are from this land. It's like, why would they be Native? I'm not Native American. You know, it's like, and even for me, it took me a long time to recognize that, you know, our ancestry would be druids or pagans or whatever, you know, really in touch with the earth. It wasn't just indigenous people. We're all indigenous.
yeah,
We're all indigenous. You know, we're all indigenous to Mother Earth. We're all daughters and sons of Mother Earth, and yeah, we got colonized. You know,
yeah,
the Romans came and defeated us. You know, and we need to grieve that, and we need to heal that. You know, I think that's, you know, part, as well as the witch burnings and all. It's just like, it's been constant. They've been constantly trying to get us down, and then they use COVID, and then they use lockdowns, and it's kind of like, you know what? We're still here and we're still free.
yeah,
And we're still drumming. Like, and that's the strength, I think, it's the strength of the community. You know, often I say to women when they make a drum, it's like you're joining a club, you know.
yeah,
You know, it's not just the women you know that are here today, or the women you might drum go. You might, you know, I might get someone who's come from maybe where you live, and they can come and join your drum circle.
yeah,
It's the ancestors. It's all those people who walked the road before us that played those drums, right back to the first ever drum. You know,
yeah,
the grandmother of all drums. You know, it's like you're being held by that energy, and the future drummers. You
yeah.
know, where's the path that we're walking with our
We are
drum?
tomorrow's ancestors.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly.
Wonderful, Rachel. So if people want to find you, thank you so much for sharing all this. You know, that's a wonderful conversation. If people want to find you online, where can they do that?
So my website is rachaelcrow.co.uk.
Yeah.
Not to get me confused with Rachael Crow, the rapper in America.
Okay. Yeah. I think when I tried to find your website the other day, I was trying to look for your blurb for this podcast. I
Yeah.
was like, oh yeah, you know, I need to add drum to it, and then I find you. So
No.
if you type Rachael Crow, you crow like the bird,
Yeah.
and drum, you'll find your website. Yeah.
Okay. But I think the other Rachael, I spell Rachel AEL at the end. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind of
also
different.
that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any social media accounts as well?
I kind of dip in. I'm mostly active on Instagram, which
Yeah.
again is Rachel, and it's a double underscore Crow. It's the only way I could get my name on Instagram, and it feeds through to my Facebook, but I don't really like Facebook. I don't go on it much. So yeah, and YouTube. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
Will this go on YouTube?
Say again?
Will this go on YouTube?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I upload so this podcast is available on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you can link me on YouTube.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
very much, Rachel.